Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week, and this week in data breaches was no different than every other week. We've got breaches left and right, including some old ones that are coming back to light. But before we dive in, as always, I want to thank those that sent me a good chunk of these. It always helps me out, and that would be Darren Young, Andy Jenkinson, Jacqueline Wolf, and Charles Stussy. So thank you very much for that, and with that, let's dive right in with the Port of Seattle and also the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, because they announced on Saturday, August 31st, basically that more of their systems have come back online following a suspected cyber attack against the airport on August 24. Quote, nearly all common use airline systems for flights have been returned. That is according to the statement that they released that Saturday, and the airport said that travelers would begin to see more monitors coming back online. In other words, you're looking at the arrivals, departures, baggage claim, whatever. All of it went down. So the attack was focused on the Port of Seattle, which actually operates the airport, and online communications were affected, including the website used by the airport to advise passengers of their flight status, although there was a workaround webpage with basic information set up and running by Wednesday, so obviously down for a while as they're running emergency procedures to try to get back online. Airport Wi-Fi and baggage processing also went down, and the port's email system went offline. Baggage displays, flight monitors, and other information signs remained unavailable as of that Saturday. Now, Port of Seattle officials have not revealed any details about how the cyber attack was carried out, except to say, quote-unquote, nefarious characters were involved. And I quote, that is the question that is on everybody's mind, and all of our staff are working to figure out exactly what occurred, end quote. That's according to the airport. So obviously, if you're flying to or from Seattle via Seattle-Tacoma, heads up to you. It's been a mess. Moving on, let's head to the Great White North, but a little bit of the United States as well, and talk about AutoCanada. They are a major Canadian car dealership, and they disclosed a cyber attack this past week that may have resulted in some disruptions. Now, the incident was discovered on August 11th, and it impacted internal IT systems, according to the company. While they did not share any additional information on the incident, the brief description suggests that they may have been targeted by a ransomware attack. And for the record, AutoCanada operates 70 dealerships across multiple provinces of Canada, and apparently 18 in the state of Illinois here in the United States. And obviously they sell tens of thousands of vehicles every year. So obviously a big impact. So if you are shopping for a car, you might want to check in if you're using an AutoCanada dealer. And I went looking on their website, and they're all named something else, but you know, whatever, like Bushwick Honda or whatever it is, I think was one of them actually. So there you go. And with that, let's move on to North Korea, aka Best Korea, if you ask them, and talk about one of their hacking groups, because earlier in August, they apparently exploited a previously unknown bug in Google's Chrome-based browsers to target organizations with the goal of stealing cryptocurrency. Now, this is according to researchers at Microsoft, and it always puts a smile on my face when Microsoft finds flaws in Google's products and Google finds flaws in Microsoft's products. Same with Apple and Google as well, because they all have this healthy rivalry. And while we're in cybersecurity and want to be collaborative, I know Microsoft likes poking Google in the eye, Google likes poking Apple in the eye, and vice versa, and that entire round robin. So here we are, Microsoft basically spilling the dirt on Google, but it's important information we need to know. And at the end of the day, I don't care who you work for, we're all in this together. So in this Microsoft report published this past Friday, there's researchers said that they first saw evidence of the attackers' activities on August 19th, and said that the attackers were affiliated with the Citrine Sleet Group, which is known to target cryptocurrency, and again, backed by North Korea. Now, researchers wrote that Citrine Sleet, quote, is based in North Korea and primarily targets financial institutions, particularly organizations and individuals managing cryptocurrency for financial gain. And the group has conducted extensive reconnaissance of the cryptocurrency industry and individuals associated with it as essentially part of their social engineering attacks. And I'm bringing this up in breaches of the week, primarily because we're going to see breaches that I'm going to be talking about thanks to North Korea's Citrine Sleet. Moving on, let's talk about MOVEit. Now, if you're a longtime listener, follower, watcher of mine, you know every week for months I was talking on the Sunday breaches of the week on Move It. Same with On the Radio show as well. And so we haven't seen one in a while, but now we've got a new one that's declaring as a result of using Move It, kind of late to the game, Texas Dow Employees Credit Union. So if you belong to Texas Dow Employees Credit Union, you might want to check in and ask them why the heck it took them this long to figure out they were part of Move It, which impacted an absolute bazillion amount of companies. Moving on. Let's talk about Young Consulting. Apparently they do software. On August 26th, they filed a notice with Maine after discovering that confidential information from their infrastructure was subject to unauthorized access. And in this notice, Young Consulting explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access information belonging to members of Blue Shield of California. Evidently, the leaked data includes Social Security, dates of birth, insurance policy, and claims information. And basically 950,000 people were impacted by this, and they are sending out letters. So if you're a member of Blue Shield of California, you might want to check in. Here it's Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. Moving on. Let's talk about Park and Fly, heading back up to the Great White North, because they are warning that a data breach exposed the personal and account information of 1 million customers in Canada after attackers breached their network. Now, threat actors breached Park and Fly's networks through stolen VPN credentials in mid-July and stole data from the company. On August 1, the company determined that the customer information was accessed during this attack. And I quote, "Based on our investigation, we determined that the unauthorized activity occurred between July 11 through July 13, 2024. On August 1, we determined that some of your personal information was likely affected by this incident." Now, this kind of underscores if it's a stolen username and credential, one, they're running a VPN, which for most corporations is older or more antiquated technology. World is moving to cloud access security brokers, secure edge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it also tells us they probably weren't running multi-factor authentication, a single username and password logging into the VPN, and game over. So obviously a huge issue. Park and Fly, basically you got to really step up your game here, and if you are one of the 1 million Canadians affected by this, you definitely want to check in. I'm sure you're not happy. You'll definitely get a sorry from them. Moving on, let's talk about Dick's Sporting Goods. They are, I think, all over the United States. There's like a whole bunch here in the Chicagoland area. And on August 28th of this year, Dick's filed a notice with the SEC after discovering unauthorized third party getting into their systems as well. Now, in their notice, which I assume is an 8K filing, Dick's explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access, quote, portions of its systems containing certain confidential information, end quote. Now, Dick's is still investigating the incident. However, if Dick's confirms that confidential information was indeed compromised, they'll be sending out notices as well. So heads up to you, patrons of Dick's Sporting Goods. I want to say there's like 3 of them within an hour of my house. Moving on. I want to do our mini segment basically entitled, if you just spent money on cybersecurity, you wouldn't be getting sued, you wouldn't be getting fined, and you wouldn't be losing your reputation. And first up is luxury retailer Neiman Marcus. If you recall, I recently talked about them in a previous breaches segment, had to have been a few weeks ago or so. They just got hit with a class action lawsuit in New Jersey federal court over their data breach impacting both customers and employees. Now, this suit stems from the breach that was announced in May, so maybe it was earlier than I thought. And essentially, this is a fallout from the Snowflake cloud platform that impacted more than 64,000 Neiman Marcus customers. If you remember, Snowflake, the cloud provider, got hit, and AutoZone, Ticketmaster, Live Nation, and a whole bunch of others had to declare data breaches. Well, Neiman Marcus was using Snowflake, and here we are. Moving on. Our next one is Uber. Now, Uber has been fined 290 million euros, roughly 324 million US, in the Netherlands for sending the personal information of European taxi drivers to the United States in violation of EU GDPR rules. And that is according to the Dutch DPA, or Data Protection Authority, basically speaking this past Monday on this. Uber has announced that they have stopped this practice, and the DPA has basically said, yes, we agree that they have stopped this, and so here we are. Adhering to compliance law is so unbelievably important, especially when you're looking at the forward-thinking EU that are finding absolutely everybody and anyone. And so this really just underscores, if you're running a big cloud platform like an Uber and you're watching or listening this, you really need to make sure you're adhering to those laws. And dude, just don't violate our privacy. That's all we ask. And so that was the mini segment for this week. There wasn't a lot of legal activity that I could find, but if Neiman Marcus and Uber had just been actually doing what they were supposed to do and had good security and privacy controls, they wouldn't be getting fined, they wouldn't be getting sued. Moving on. Now let's talk about the Facial Pain Center, who I'm assuming is in a lot of pain themselves at the moment, because on August 9th, they filed with Health and Human Services, U.S. Department, basically saying that an unauthorized party was able to access employee email accounts. Now, what we're talking about here is names, demographic information, medical information, health insurance information, and dates of birth. And upon completing their investigation, they have begun sending out notices as well. So heads up to you, patients of the Facial Pain Center. Moving on. Let's talk about Patelco Credit Union. They are warning customers that they suffered a data breach after data was stolen in a Ransom Hub ransomware attack earlier this year. Now, the organization did not name the attackers, but the Ransom Hub gang claimed responsibility on August 15th of this year when they published all of the stolen data on their extortion portal that they had on Patelco. Now, last month, Patelco disclosed it suffered a ransomware attack on June 29th of this year. That forced it to shut down customer-facing banking systems to contain the damage to protect people's data. And so what we are talking about are access to full name, social security, driver's license, date of birth, and email address as well. And so here we are. If you're a patron of Patelco, odds are I'm going to be talking about you sooner than later in a class action in that mini segment, but you might want to check in until then. Moving on, let's talk about the Public Agency Retirement Services, or PARS, or PARS. On August 29th, they filed with California after discovering an unauthorized party was able to access a company email account. Now, in this notice, basically they said that access to consumers' sensitive information did happen as a result of an unauthorized third party getting access to it. They did not list that out. They are sending out notifications as well. So if you basically are a member of the Public Agency Retirement Services organization, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about Strive Medical. On August 28th of this year, Strive Holdco LLC, aka Strive Medical, or just Strive, filed with California after discovering that an unauthorized party was able to access an employee's email account. Now, in this notice, Strive Medical explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access information that they shouldn't have. We're talking names, dates of birth, medical information, provider names, medical record numbers, patient account numbers, Medicaid and Medicare ID numbers, prescription information, and health insurance information as well. You know they're sending out a whole bunch of stuff and notifications as well, so Strive Medical, heads up to you if you're a patient. Moving on, the Radiological Society of North America. So I'm guessing Mexico, US, and Canada are members. Don't know. But on August 28th, they filed with Massachusetts after discovering a recent data incident, essentially that was outside of their informational control, according to what I'm reading here. Now, in this notice, they explain that this basically resulted in sensitive information being compromised, including names and social security numbers. That's all I know. And then the Radiological Society of North America is sending out letters to affected members. So if you're a radiologist, you might want to check in. Moving on, Western Electrical Contractors. On August 29th, they filed with Maine, even though they're Western. That's odd. Anyway, after they confirmed suspicious activity in their infrastructure, and in this notice, Western Electrical Contractors explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access consumer-sensitive information. We're talking names, dates of birth, social security, driver's license, financial account information, payment card information, medical information, and health insurance information. So I'm guessing employees were obviously caught up in this as well, and they are basically sending out breach notifications to 35,290 individuals whose information was affected. Obviously, never a good look. Hopefully, they'll get that under control. Moving on. Let's talk about Well Life Network. On August 29th, they filed with Massachusetts after discovering an unauthorized party had gained access to their IT network. Now, in this notice, Well Life Network explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access consumers' information, and we're talking names, address, dates of birth, date or marriage certificates, social security numbers. I don't usually see date or marriage certificates for the record. Driver's license numbers, passport numbers, student ID numbers, medical information, health insurance information, Medicare, Medicaid, IDs, electronic signatures, maiden names, and financial information. And so heads up to you, if you have Well Life Network, apparently they know absolutely everything about you because, well, they just got it exposed and they are sending notifications out as well. Moving on, Communication Federal Credit Union, or CFCU, they filed a notice with Massachusetts after discovering an unauthorized party access portions of their network. Now, in this notice, CFCU explained that the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access information, and we're talking the usual names, birth date, social security, address, driver's license, financial information, etc., etc. I don't know if you'd send a marriage certificate into a credit union, but if you did, here we go. Now, they are sending out notices as well. Let's head on down to Florida and talk about Lakeland's Watson Clinic, because patients are now receiving letters notifying them about a breach at the beginning of the year. Now, according to this letter, apparently a third party, unauthorized, accessed part of their network on January 26th of this year, and they discovered this intrusion on February 6th. They are claiming names, contact information, birth dates, social security, medical records, including details on diagnosis, treatment, or medical record numbers, were all caught up in this breach. So if you're a patient of Lakeland's Watson Clinic in Florida, you definitely check in. Moving on, let's stay in Florida and talk about the entire state's Department of Health, because they confirmed a significant data breach giving attackers access to personal information, including names, social security numbers, and medical records. Now, Floridians have started to get letters in the mail informing them of this June 26th cyber attack, and essentially of the specific items that may have been compromised. What I have is what I have on that one, and essentially a known hacking group got access to this data and demanded ransom, but Florida, as a statewide policy, does not pay the criminals, and so essentially they're not going to pay, and by virtue of that, this may be sold or dumped out somewhere. So heads up to you if you're a resident of Florida and you have anything to do with your Department of Health. Moving on, let's head on up to Minnesota and let's talk about the Human Services Department. Personal information for more than 4,300 people may have been compromised due to the Minnesota Department of Human Services having some type of breach. And this is what they are saying this past Friday. Now, this breach came as a result of an email phishing attempt on July 2nd. And it doesn't seem like it's an attempt if they're declaring a breach. The next day, an employee email account was quote-unquote secured after officials learned of this incident. We're talking full name, date of birth, contact information, treatment information, medical diagnosis, demographic data, and social security numbers for 4,329 people. So if you're a Minnesotan that uses the Human Services Department, good luck and heads up. Moving on. Let's talk about USAA, or the United Services Automobile Association. On August 27th, they filed with Maine after discovering an unauthorized party was able to gain access and view personal information on certain customers. In this notice, USAA explained the incident resulted in an unauthorized party being able to access sensitive information. We're talking names, addresses, emails, dates of birth, social security numbers, driver's license, passport, vehicle IDs, loan numbers, health information, and property and casualty insurance policy information. USAA is sending out breaches as well. And finally, and we've got a finally for you today, and before I preface this, because I found this one to be very interesting, let me talk to all the guys out there, mostly guys. Pay your child support. Just pay it. That's all I'm asking. Finding creative ways to avoid taking responsibility for your kids and not paying this isn't just bad, it can land you in jail. Now, here's what happened, and I think this is both amusing and kind of sad at the same time, because a Kentucky man attempted to fake his death in order to avoid paying child support obligations by hacking into state registries, falsifying official records, and more, according to federal prosecutors. Now, the person in question is Jesse Kipf, age 39, of Somerset, and he was sentenced on this past Monday to 9 years in federal prison after reaching a plea deal agreement where he admitted basically going to great lengths to simply avoid paying child support. I don't care if you hate your ex. It's your kid. Pay for the kid. Now, Kif's scheme began in January of last year, 2023, when he accessed Hawaii's death registry system by using the username and password of a doctor living in another state, according to a medical release from Carlton Shire, the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Kentucky. Now, I don't know if this was a stolen username and password he found in the dark web, but he logged in as this doctor, and once inside the network, Kiff created a case for his own death and then completed a worksheet for a death certificate in that state, according to the federal prosecutor. Now, the filing resulted in Kiff being registered as a deceased person in several government databases. Kiff also accessed other state registry systems and private networks using credentials taken from real people, and then attempted to sell the access to these portals on the dark web. So in other words, he's not just basically faking his own death and avoiding paying his child support. He's now selling the access that he just used to do it. Quote, Kiff admitted that he faked his own death in part to avoid his outstanding child support obligations. Now, Kiff was arrested in November, and he pled guilty in April of this year to federal charges of aggravated identity theft and computer fraud. He was sentenced in the U.S. District Court in London on Monday. I'm assuming that's London, Kentucky. Now, Kiff divorced in 2008, and he was deployed to Iraq for nearly a year between 2007 and 2008, according to court records. So I'm guessing the marriage fell apart for whatever reason. Obviously, a child or children stem from this, and his restitution now, per court order, is that he must pay more than $195,000 in restitution for damage to computer systems, which also then includes the remaining total of his child support. So it really doesn't pay. I mean, think about this. He owes about $200,000, plus he has to spend 9 years in prison, let's say 6 years with good behavior, all for avoiding a monthly payment, probably to a woman he doesn't like. But it's your kid. Take care of your kids. Don't do this. And if you have the requisite skills and understanding of how to do these kinds of things, don't do it either. I don't. You shouldn't. So there you go. Pay your child support bills. Those were your breaches of the week. Hopefully you weren't affected, but if you're Kip's kid, you're not having a good week because your dad's kind of a jerk. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. And for the love of God, single dads, pay your damn child support. Take care.